My next guest is Peter Marshall. He has more than 35 years of experience as an educator. He has served as a teacher, school administrator, and system leader in Ontario, working in leadership and staff development, as well as opening a new school. He currently serves as a Solution Tree Assessment Center Associate. He wrote Today's Teachers, Tomorrow's Leaders, a guide to identifying and developing future administrators. Welcome to the podcast, Peter.
Thank you, Dana. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Well, one of the beautiful things about retiring from my administration career and now doing this consulting work is um, I don't have to live in the past. So while the past has really helped me with the things that I'm doing now, um, I get to remember all the wonderful things that happened in my education career. And although I had times in the trenches, now I get to go out and speak about all the wonderful things that education can do. But I can discuss, or I'd love to discuss about how this concept of being in the trenches really informed the work that I'm doing now.
Mhm.
I was very fortunate to be given a position at our central office. So I was a principal at a school and I was removed from that school in order to work at a central office position and essentially be the principal responsible for leadership and staff development. So I was there for my colleagues that were in schools, running schools, as well as looking after our new teacher program. So
Mhm.
as new people came to the profession, I heard their stories. I The program was a 2-year program, so you got to travel with those teachers as they experienced things for their first 2 years and hear about the times that they were in the trenches. As well is I had lots of colleagues and friends who were administrators with me, and they were in schools, running schools, and here I was sitting at a central office position. So
Mhm.
they would contact me for information, they would contact me for assistance, and I heard their stories and collected their stories. And one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to be a great support for the adults because
Mhm.
when we support the adults in education, our students do better, right? When teachers are really well and they're managing really well and they've got high expectations of students, students do really well. When administrators who are running our buildings, when they're doing well, great things can happen in our school. So I focused my attention on what I could do because I was out of a school to directly impact students through the adults that were working with them. So
Mhm.
I noticed some common stories coming up. People were struggling with communication, not being understood, their message being turned around, their message not being what they wanted it to be. Um, I noticed that some people really didn't know who they were as individuals, and they came across situations where their values and beliefs were called into question, or they had to look at their values and beliefs about how they were going to make decisions.
Mhm.
Um, I also saw a lot of people struggling with just the time commitment that's required in education, right? So much input coming at us.
Mhm.
We're often responding to things as they come,
Mhm.
right? And there's never enough time in the day, right? I heard someone say once that education is one of those jobs where we have to get accustomed to the fact that 75% of the jobs only ever get 50% done,
Yeah.
right? There's just so much out there. So I got interested in time management and how we
Mhm.
can be better with our email and our inboxes and all of those sort of things. So when I was at the board office, we had lots of legacy programs that were available for people. But I also started to search out what was available out there. What was the very best in communication? What was the very best in organization, getting to know yourself? Um, the other large area was how adults need to be leading adults.
Okay.
When teachers go into administration, one of the big ahas is the amount of time that they're spending with adults. When
Mhm.
I talk to new vice principals, when I talk to principals, they never guessed that when they became an administrator, so much of their time was going to be dedicated to the adults,
Yeah.
right? As well as the students. So what does it mean when you're working with adults? How are adults different than working with students?
Mhm.
Because all of them are excellent teachers. They were trained in how to work with students, but while there's some similarities working with adults, there's very many differences as well. So I left that position because I didn't want to retire from that central position. I wanted to go back to a school, and
Mhm.
very fortunate to be able to given the opportunity to open a brand new school. So
Mhm.
I was able to hire the staff, bring in the staff, develop mission, vision, values right from the ground up. And I wanted to continue the work that I had started by focusing on the adults. Although I was going to connect again with students, I knew that the influence that I had as a leader would be through the wonderful people that were in that building. So
Mhm.
focus my attention on the teachers that were there, the support staff that were there, secretarial staff, everyone in that staff. And it was a huge school. It was very, very large. So
Mhm.
if I can be the best that I can be for the adults that are there, I know it's going to have an impact on students. So that's when I started becoming really aware of excellent programs that are out there. And
Mhm.
then when I retired 7 years from in that school, I
Mhm.
stayed connected to those wonderful programs. And I've been very fortunate because all those companies, all those organizations that I deemed as really important for people to understand, they've they've blessed me by continuing to work with them. So I do a lot of contract work for those particular companies now to this day, and that's the education consulting that I do. Um, I get to use products and I get to use materials that I myself used with staff and go
Mhm.
out and talk to other people about those tools.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And I think your work at that school that you helped open, is part of what led you to writing, Today's Teachers, Tomorrow's Leaders, a guide to identifying and developing future administrators. So how did that, writing of the book come together? And what was the story, from working with the staff that, you talk a lot about in the book?
Well, you broke up a little bit there, but I heard you starting to talk about the book. So
Mhm.
just maybe a nod. I believe your question was asking me sort of what was the genesis of the book? Where did it
Yes.
come? Where did the ideas come from?
Mhm.
Um, well, because I was in that leadership position, of course, read a lot, um, gathered in as much information as I could about what is leadership. And
Mhm.
um, when you think back, or even in your current situation now, think about the wonderful people that have inspired you. You know,
Mhm.
think about those leaders because we all come across amazing people that lead us, and we also see some non-examples of things we would never want to do. But what is it about those people? What was it about those individuals that to this day you think of them and say, yeah, that's a person that should be running a school. That's a person that should be looking after the lives of so many people. And I really wanted to focus in on what is that magic sauce.
Mhm.
And I called it a way of being,
Mhm.
and identified, certain ways of being that I noticed in the adults in my building. Things like optimism. These were optimistic people, right? Even when they were in the trenches, they had faith and resilience that they were doing important work, and what they were doing was really important. And they present themselves to the public, they present themselves to their colleagues, they present themselves to students every single day, right? And they're the weather forecast, right?
Mhm.
They're going to make they're going to make the situation and the culture in their classroom very much based on how they're feeling and how they interact with people. So just being understanding that education is very public, right? So when I stepped out of my office, I was really aware that eyes were on me. So
Mhm.
how do I project that optimism? Another way of being that excellent teachers demonstrate, and you know that they're going to be excellent administrators one day, is that they advocate for all students, right?
Mhm.
They speak for the voices that are often not heard. They make sure that their policies and they make sure that their teaching strategies hit every single student, right? That they don't leave, like all means all. So they're going to do that work. Things like problem solving, how they solve difficulties and problem solve, communication. So um, I narrowed my focus on 10 different aspects of ways of being. And then I generated what you would see in a teacher to indicate to you that that is a strong way of being for them. and
Mhm.
created checklists, created templates for people to use. Because um, Dana, if you and I are working together and you are excellent with students, but you need assistance with your communication,
Mhm.
particularly you communicating with your teaching partners or your peers and colleagues, I'm in a position to support you and help you so that I can give you the confidence of working, right? Confidence comes from preparation. So
Mhm.
I know, because I'm in the position as an administrator, some of the things that you're going to face. So you're with me every single day.
Mhm.
Like a board of education could have an amazing um, leadership development program. They could have an amazing selection process and interview process, but it doesn't replace the fact that you're with me every single day in the school. Like
Mhm.
I see your interactions with colleagues, I see your interactions with students. You're going to go to an interview, you're going to provide your resume and cover letter, and although I imagine that you would be spectacular in that setting's very different than a school setting.
Mhm.
So I wrote the book because I think boards of education and people looking at leadership development have to give real credibility to the day to day, in and out, good times, bad times, people in the trenches, people rising above the trenches, um, of the work that they do, because people are not stepping forward into administration. People are not stepping forward into leadership positions. And why is that? And how can we make the position attractive? And how can we help people be prepared for it? Because
Mhm.
that whole idea of having confidence when they're prepared.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, looking for those people who wanna make the difference, who, open their classroom door to, peers, not only peers and admin, but people to observe, and have those crucial conversations with staff, I think, are those you want to help bring into leadership. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the trainings that you provide. You said, right now in retirement, you are working with several companies that you worked with in your
Mhm.
last role as principal. So talk to me first about the crucial conversations for mastering dialogue, the company that you do that with.
Okay. Well, that's a company called Crucial Learning,
Mhm.
and I recommend to all your listeners that they search out this company, Crucial Learning. They are leaders in the field of communication, but also leaders in the field of organization and time management. They've got excellent programs. One of them called Getting Things Done,
Mhm.
about how to manage everything. And their their programs, essentially, they're on the corporate side, but also in healthcare and also in education. I just saw the impact of those programs to build confidence for people. It's not scripted. I'm not suggesting that this program provides you with a whole bunch of scripts or ways to say things, but it really is about, half of our conversation is the conversation that I'm having inside internally with myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
Take waiting my turn to respond to you, really deeply listening to you, but centering myself and getting myself ready for the conversation.
Mhm.
And I just highly recommend the program about mastering dialogue, because it creates better listeners in all of us, and better outcomes for what it was. So that's one company that I continue to do training for. Um, in my local area in Canada, but I never pass up an opportunity to come down to the United States and do some training as well. But they have a series of different options, both virtual and in person,
Okay.
and it's all about the importance of communication. But
Mhm.
it starts with that whole idea of who you are and who you bring to the conversation, and how you can make sure that you are inquisitive about what the other person wants, but also confident in yourself to make sure that you get your message across.
Mhm, mhm, mm. Yeah, and I think, like you said, these are all pieces that, they train a lot of staff on in corporate and also in a lot of medical fields, but really getting more training on those pieces, like getting things done, the power of habit, those types of things, I think really need to be focused on more in schools as well. And I introduced you as it being as assessment center associate for Solution Tree. So what does that role entail?
Okay. Well, Solution Tree, as your listeners may know, or as you may know, is a large organization, and they run large conferences and workshops and training at individual schools and individual district, as well as large area conferences on topics of education. And I became aware of them through the work of a good friend. And when I was getting close to retirement, I was in conversation with Solution Tree because some of the work that I had done in my school on leadership and adult learning, and they asked me essentially to come down to an associate's training that was
Okay.
in Bloomington, Indiana. And it was, I had to go down with presentations already, as
Okay.
well as while I was there learning facilitation of how to work with adults. And then essentially at the end of the weekend, you perform. You perform for a series of people, including authors. And from that weekend, a number of us were successful in being designated as what they call associates. So um, I am now an author of a book,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, but some associates are not authors, but
Okay.
they speak on behalf of authors. So Dana, your district, your area may want to do lots of work in assessment and evaluation, and they really want to look at their assessment and evaluation practices. And
Mm-hmm.
there's marvelous authors and marvelous people at Solution Tree that can come out to your district and speak about assessment and evaluation, look at where you are and where the gaps are in the work that they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And those individuals are highly sought after. They're very busy. Um, they're also writing all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm an associate for them.
Mm-hmm.
I have become part of their team where they are comfortable with me speaking on their behalf. So
Okay.
I can come to, I can come to your district as an associate and share their good work, share their resources. And you might not get the person that wrote the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at a different cost, you may be able
Yeah.
to have an associate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that I've written this book, and now that I'm an author myself, I'm an associate for other people's work, but of course,
Mm-hmm.
then an author and a speaker about my own work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know that that actually was possible for because I've been in contact with associates for Solution Tree before, but I didn't know that they were also speaking on behalf of other books. I know some of the like original Solution Tree authors, maybe you had associates, but like even just those books that are published more recently, if they're too busy, you can then speak on their behalf as well.
Correct. So my in with Solution Tree was in the area of assessment and evaluation.
Okay.
But over time, not only have I traveled to Tennessee and North Dakota and
Mhm.
Oklahoma and spoken about assessment and evaluation, I can go down and speak about leadership. I can go down and speak about mission, vision, values, that kind of work. And incredibly high standards. So after every speaking engagement, after every coaching session, a large evaluation from the hosts, and
Mhm.
there's a certain standard that has to be maintained.
Okay.
And if I don't maintain that standard, Solution Tree will provide training in that particular area, whatever the area is that is below their standard. And then
Okay.
the expectation is when I go back out that that area is improved. So that shows me that it's a company that cares very much about how they are presented to the public, the quality of workshops that they give. And anyone that associates with Solution Tree knows that they're going to get high quality professional development because it's not just anybody that's presenting and doing that work. They have to maintain that standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know because like you're kind of speaking from the back end of being a presenter for them and an associate, and knowing that yes, you are evaluated by those schools that you go out to, so they can
Yeah.
maintain that standard. So you also do some psychometric personality profile work for Lumina Learning Canada. What is that about?
While Lumina Learning is a global company, originally based in the United Kingdom.
Mhm.
And once again, I recommend that your listeners go onto a website and look up Lumina Learning, and it's a psychometric where it will find out where you'll find out information about who you are as an individual. So going back to my original story, how can we possibly lead other people when
Mhm.
we don't know who we are?
Yeah.
When we don't know what we value, when we don't know what our preferences happen to be. And these psychometrics there's lots of psychometrics on the market that people can go and they can find out about who they are. Um, but it's a complex tool because we're more than just four basic colors, if we use an example, right? So all of us have done professional development when we think about, you know, people that are this particular color like their work to be in this particular way. Well, this is that times 100 with the information that you can seek. And part of the psychometric also talks about when we're not at our best, right? When the term that they use is when we're overextended. Because when I'm overextended, which happens a lot in education, it's the nature of your podcast talking about the trenches, right?
Yeah.
When I'm overextended, I'm impacting relationships.
Yeah.
I'm impacting my integrity. I'm
Mhm.
impacting the trust of the people that are with me. Now, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to overextend,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to have good days, bad days, but it does mean that I need to be aware of when I'm not performing at my best because it has impact on others, right? So if you and I are colleagues, Dana, you probably have people in your life that can come up to you and say, "Hey, Dana, are you okay?
Mhm.
Can
Mhm.
I take this from you?" Right? Like, do you want to take a break right now before going further? Because they're trying to assist you because you travel any further in that state,
Mhm.
right? You're going to say the wrong thing, you're going to do the wrong action. So understanding who we are through a psychometric and one of the things that Lumina Learning is very strong on is the teamwork, right?
Okay.
Like in education, we put teams of people together and expect that they're going to get along because they're
Mhm.
adults. And
Yeah.
and I know that there's as many functional teams as dysfunctional teams, right? So what we do as leaders is we change we change the tools or we change the product or we change the aspect of the group. I swap people out in that grade team and replace people and move them all around trying to find a magic fit instead of working on the relationships and the connections between the people.
Mhm.
So in that brand new school, when I opened, everybody in that school did a psychometric, and
Mhm.
it showed what their strengths were, what their passions were, the things that they preferred to work with. Because if you and I are working with each other, and you very much love vision and big picture. You love flying the plane and seeing everything, but I
Mhm.
like landing the plane. I like doing the work, right? Like I'm very organized or very reliable, but you have big pictures and big dreams and you're very imaginative. If a leader puts us together and never gives us time to talk about that, never
Mhm.
gives that us time to figure that out about each other, one of us, you or I, are going to the principal's office and say, I can't work with that person,
Mhm.
right? And so much of it is just knowing the people that you work with and and having belief in the diversity of ways of being. So going back to the ways of being, I see value in the way that you look at things because it's different than mine. And we're better when we work with people that go about things in a different way or view things in a different manner. But only if we know that, only if
Mhm.
we respect that and work towards that. And I stop every once in a while and say, "Hey, Dana, what's your perspective?
Mhm.
What would you add to this?" Because groups have groupthink, right? Like the loudest voices in the room, the most dominant voices in the room are going to move that group. But
Mhm.
if that group can learn to stop, put feet on the brake,
Mhm.
ask other people, right? One of the key concepts is about building rapport. So I build rapport with you, Dana, because there's aspects in my personality when you and I work together that I have to amplify. Right?
Mhm.
You and I need it. Maybe I need to be really creative because neither one of us really comes to creativity all that much. But I know that that's lacking. Or maybe I have to be the one that's organized and keep the minutes and keep the agendas and keep us on task. Maybe that's something that I prefer in the way that we work. But then
Mhm.
there's other aspects of our personality, believe it or not, that you and I are too much for some people, right?
Mhm.
And we've got to tone that down.
Yeah.
So when groups and people and teams can work together and understand who they are, I'm better able to amplify aspects of my personality, decrease certain aspects of my personality, all towards, co-creating really good results. And in education, those really key important results are for a really important audience.
Yeah.
It's for our students,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and like you said, there's so many aspects of understanding people's personality and being able to work with people that may have a different communication style than you through doing these personality profiles. And I think when people are doing master's degrees or in some type of a licensure program, like when I did principal licensure, we do these profiles, but not often in a school. So, like you did when you were opening this school and learning more about the staff, I think it's so important for leaders just to start, especially if there's a lot of turnover or new staff at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'll just add, it was hugely beneficial for me as a leader when the individuals that are frontline with the students are
mhm.
cooperating with each other, getting along with each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
So it's really an investment on my
Mhm,
part that's well worth it. Plus, Lumina Learning shows me an overview of what I have on my staff,
mhm,
and there were certain areas that were missing. Um,
mhm,
as a real perfect example, it was an elementary school, so I had lots of people that were really people focused. That's what their profile showed them, that they were collaborative and they liked interacting with people. And I had less people that were outcome focused. Well,
yeah.
it's important in education that we are working towards outcomes, right?
Mm,
Like students aren't just coming to school to have a good time and build relationships. We have an important job to do,
mhm,
right? But if my entire team, if my entire intermediate division are
mhm,
all people focused, I those people who are not people focused are really important to the team. And
mhm,
I may need to go out and in future years hiring, because our school just kept getting larger and larger. In an interview process, can I pick out the people who are imaginative, spontaneous, big picture thinkers, like really creative? I think it's really easy in an interview context to find those people that are that spontaneous, are that imaginative, have big ideas,
mhm.
right? As opposed to being really contained and stoic. Like I
Yeah.
think it comes out in their personality. And once again, um, the tool helps, I know, administrators in our system be
Mhm.
careful not to hire more of themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like the school already has me,
Mhm.
and you would come in for an interview, Dana, and within a very few seconds, I can tell I like you.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to come work with me, but I've got to use the rest of that interview time to find out, do you fit within our team? Is
Yeah.
there something that you need? Because if not, I'm just going to keep hiring more and more people like me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then we have that group think situation where the school is not going to be adaptable. The school is not going to have wildly creative ideas, because anyone who doesn't fit that mold or doesn't fit that um, overall perspective is going to feel tuned out or not listened to.
Mhm.
So I think this tool is wonderful for opening our minds up to lots of different perspectives, and how healthy that is to
Mhm.
have multiple perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. Really important to remember. So, you wrote a blog post called Education Can Save Your Life. And
Okay.
that's kind of how you were sort of discovered by Solution Tree. So talk to me about some of the things that you put in this blog post that came from your time working at the school.
Certainly. Well, when I was getting close to retirement, one of the things that I decided to start to do was I started writing a daily blog, a daily on social media, and it was called 30 Things I'll Miss. And it
Mhm,
was just a countdown from the 30 last days of school,
mhm,
about all the things I was going to miss in education. And it was, I thought about potentially writing, but it was for Solution Tree to see my writing, to
mhm, yeah.
to have them, right, to have them see that I was capable of doing this. particularly with the right people as editors and support staff, which they have many, and they're very, very talented people. Because I'm a presenter and I'm a speaker, I'm not a writer, right? So you don't want to read a book that's written the way that I'm speaking to you now, right? Like it's important to be to the point and have all your references and citations correct. So in the writing of this 30 days, I knew that the very last one was going that I was going to write was something that I heard from my father. I
Mhm.
heard from my father as I was growing up. So my father was in a situation where his education, uh, he decided to stay in high school and get his high school degree, and get a profession and get a trade, get a job. And he was a carpenter. He was a carpenter by trade. And then the war hit. World War II hit. And because of my dad's carpentry skills, he was hired to repair aircraft.
Mhm.
And he actually moved out of Canada to Newfoundland because Newfoundland and Canada at that time of the war was not part of Canada.
Okay.
So he was in Newfoundland. As a matter of fact, he was in Gander. And
Mhm.
Gander Airport, your listeners may know, is a very important airport for 9/11. It's where all the
Yeah.
planes landed and come from away. That beautiful story about Newfoundland opening up its doors for people from all over the world. Well, my dad was stationed there, and he
Okay.
re- he repaired planes. And
Mhm.
not only did he repair planes, but the returning planes from overseas would land in Gander with the bodies of fallen soldiers.
Okay.
So my dad was there seeing all of these young men return to Canada.
Yeah.
And he lost many friends. He lost many friends that didn't have an education that became part of the infantry and part of the military, and they lost their lives. And my father always said that education could save your life because during war times he wanted to contribute to the war effort, but he wasn't a fighter. He didn't want to take up arms, but he wanted to contribute. So he was a mechanic, and he was a carpenter. So there were times I remember in high school and then in my university college where I'd be speaking to him about an assignment or not wanting to do it, and he would just have this little smile on his face, and he would say, "Education will save your life." And it sort of became a little mantra of his.
Mhm.
And then if you can do the math for timing, just as I was retiring, we had just come out of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And think about all the things that we did with students,
Mhm.
how education rose to the challenge of what we were going to do during the pandemic, right? And how important education was. So I wrote Education Could Save Your Life because I wanted it to be my last graduation address
Mhm. Mhm.
to a bunch of students. So it was the last graduation address that I gave to a group of students and a group of parents, and it was personal to me. It brought on a few tears, of course, because my father's no longer with us, and just I then have had a career in education, and I just I just know in all my heart that when we invest in education and we invest in good adults that are part of education, that that's going to pay us forward in the next generation, the next generation. Education is just too important to leave by chance, and we've got to be good at it. We've got to be good at it because we've got important people that we are moving forward that are going to look after us in our old age.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is, such a good thing to end with, but I still wanna ask you,
Yeah.
with everything we talked about and all the points that you've given on the recording, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Oh. Well, I don't want to sound cliche about the whole
Mhm,
idea about keep learning, right,
mhm.
and keep developing things. But
Yeah,
um, it, I want people to understand how important their motivation, their desire,
mm,
really is
yeah,
for the tone and the culture. So
mhm,
um, on those days where we feel like we're in the trenches, on those days we feel like we're pulling ourselves into work,
mhm,
we've got lots of other things happening in our lives
yeah,
with family and but just remember the young people that are in front of us
mhm,
and just how much we broadcast to other people about how the day is going to be,
yeah,
right? Like I want schools full of Tiggers, not
Yeah,
schools full of Eeyores.
yeah, yeah.
Like being being excited about doing this work, and even if it has to be a bit of a put on just to get
Yeah,
started,
yeah,
the students will feed on your
mm,
energy and your positivity, and
yeah.
I bet you that will pull you out of the trenches,
Mhm,
right? Just by having them mirror back to you your enthusiasm will
mhm,
probably drag you out and
mhm.
join them in the joy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, where can people connect with you and find you online?
Well, my website is my name, Peter
Mhm,
Marshall, with
mhm,
Peter Marshall Consulting. So all
mhm.
one word, Peter Marshall Consulting
And are you
at
on social
at
media?
gmail.com.
Okay,
I am. So that's my website, Peter Marshall Consulting
okay,
um, .com. And my email is the same, but at gmail.com.
mhm,
They can connect with me through Solution Tree. So
okay,
on the main Solution Tree page, there's a section that up at the very top where if you typed my name in, it would go to my bio page and the work that I'm
okay,
doing. There's also a link, I believe, for associates. So you
okay,
could go to the associate page, and I think we're all in alphabetical order, and
mhm,
people would find me there.
okay. Well, it was a pleasure
But
having
reach out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a pleasure speaking with you, hearing about your work, and I hope this will lead some people to contact you and explore some of the trainings that you provide.
great.